All right, so let's have a look at that. So I'm going to use also the workbook. I recommend that you open that workbook straight away. I'm going to also use mine because it will be where you'll just if you have a piece of paper, obviously you can have a look. We'll just go through the details and then you can do your homework a little bit on the side. Um, So obviously, what I'm going to discuss is how to set the goals, but we're going to look at it in a bit of a different way because, everybody knows the usual, oh, let's do the SMART goal, but the SMART goal will come only at a certain point. But for now, we're going to have a look at how to really be able to make goals and work on that. So we're going to really focus on if you've seen anything that you would like to achieve this year, we're gonna learn how to break it down. All right. Obviously you know me because you come to my classes, but I've been in circus since I'm like 8 years old, so I've got over 30 years of like knowledge in circus arts, and I've got over 10 years as a coach. So I started with gymnastics, and then I've trained with actual circus people that traveled with Cirque du Soleil and even like Moscow Circus, which was very lucky. So as you can see, I'm like really tiny here. I'm like 8 years old in that picture. That was one of the first time I did circus in my life. But I also have been coming across a lot of issues myself in my life. I've had quite a bit of my surgery, so it's quite extensive, especially for someone that young. I started at 11, so I was kind of out of it for a long time. And when I originally wanted to become a coach when I was 16, 17, I didn't make it because I didn't get the grant to go to uni. But one of the main things I've discovered was that strength training was the only thing that was really bringing me back to doing what I love. So I started dancing again, and eventually, when I moved to London, I started performing again. So it's taken me a few years to get back to where I am now. I didn't know I was going to end up coaching, which is quite cool, to be honest. But what I've noticed a lot of the time when I was going to the gym was, one, I didn't feel like the trainers really understood what was my issues. I was like, I got a bit of knee problems, I got this and that, and they were making me do squats, and I was like, the hell. It was really pissing me off, to be honest. So I decided to become one, and that's also why I really wanted to shift a little bit into teaching people how to train themselves in terms of circus training a little bit more mindfully, a little bit more smart in a smart way as well. Because even for me as a kid, when I learned, I had coaches that were like teaching me, whereas it was gymnastics or circus. And when I got back into it, pretty much the first few years were self-taught, and I was really crap because I didn't quite understand. I didn't have anyone to really teach me all these things. But becoming a coach and working with the fitness first really allowed me to start analyzing the patterns and understanding what I needed to work on in terms of foundations. So the reason why I suggest any aerialists that go to classes to set goals is because there you will have a bit more motivation and focus. When you have a goal, obviously it's been proven, there is like studies in science, right? Using goals as a roadmap really helps you also kind of really define milestones that make sense on the journey. Whereas when you just go to classes, after a few years, you obviously will progress, but a lot of things are coming randomly. And when you start setting goals, you start thinking as well, what can I achieve for myself in the long term? So this way, when you start thinking about the long-term goals, you also start thinking about structuring and showing up more consistently. So this is the number two, right? You start showing up a bit more because you know you have something to follow. And you also are able to increase that commitment as well to doing the programs, to doing that structure, to following up. And that will also give you some benefits physically, right? Not just going to a class and being able to do certain moves. It will also be, well, I've bulletproofed my shoulders and I bulletproof my hips, and I'm also more flexible and I can definitely move better and I have less issues with this and that. So overall, it will improve your performance, your skill development, but it will also give you some improvements in your lifestyle as well, which is what we all do fitness for as well. And that also leads to higher levels of self-confidence. We all know that when we achieve goals, we feel really happy. Everybody does. And overall, better stress management as well, because you also lead, sometimes aerial can lead to a lot of frustration. I think we've all been there, feeling extremely frustrated with not getting anywhere or having off days. And when you have off days and not really a plan, sometimes it can feel like you not really going anywhere, and it's quite hard sometimes for the morale. So this way we're going to work. So what I want you to think about goals, don't try and slam a huge list of goals, but you want to give yourself, I'd say 2 or 3 goals are enough. So I would say, for example, goal number 1 and 2 will be a particular pose or sequence in the area practice. Goal number 2 will be getting those flexibility goals for that moves. So obviously a lot of aerial stuff require, okay, I need to get a better split, I need to get a better straddle, I need to get better this, I need to get better shoulder flexibility. And the other goals can be the small habit that you can implement for these goals. Obviously, after that, we're going to start building the structure for it. So in the workbook, you will see, if you go a little bit down on page 7, you will actually see some sheets for you to fill out. So what I've done on here is the goal action plan. So we'll have the goal, the why, and we're going to start with that. So I'm just going to give you now just a couple, like 1 minute, to think about what you want to achieve this year. If you had to think about, I'd like to get my straight arm straddle. I've always wanted to do this thing on Instagram that I've seen and I've never been able to do it. So I want you to write in the goal and also write the why. I know it sounds really stupid to always think about the why when we write the goals, but the whys are important because you can use that as a way to say, I will finally be able to feel like I've progressed to a level that has been more intermediate or advanced or so on. So I want you to start thinking a little bit more about that for just a minute. And have you already got an idea? Have you ever thought about that before? Yeah. So do you want to share yours?
Yeah, so I don't even know how to describe it, but when you kind of do, say, trapeze and I did that false grip, it's the getting your bum and body up.
Yes.
It's
So
the
actually do a
obviously,
pike invert, like a properly,
yeah,
yeah.
and kind of at the minute I do like a little weird jumpy leg thing, but the girls who are
Yeah,
good at it,
using momentum a lot and
yes,
yes,
they
okay.
they they just kind of go, ooh. So I say I
Yes.
don't even know how to describe it, but that's like, I mean, it's very, very basic, but that's kind of, a
That's
start.
that's kind of the basis of a lot of other movements as well. So of course that's something that you want to achieve.
Mhm.
That's a really good and easy simple enough goal that is easily achievable as well. And what about you, Sharanda? You can unmute yourself. We're only 3 people, so it's great.
Like, I was trying to figure out. I'm on my phone because like
No, you were
I'm running out
you're like me,
again.
like still like where are all the buttons?
Yeah. That's the same with me actually. The pull up invert and
Yes.
advance to straight arm invert as
Yes.
well.
Okay.
See, you
Great.
know the names. I don't even know the names.
So
You're
you
kind
the
of
what would
yeah,
you yeah, it's like we call that an invert, and then you can call it an invert into an invert straddle is the one that you can do on a trapeze and the hoop. So with the hands in inside like on your crotch with the legs open. The other one is just the invert pike where you get the leg through and you're upside down, more like false grip style.
yeah.
Yeah. So, all right, that's great. I love that. So let's have a look. This is what exactly what we're talking about. This is your straight arm straddle invert. So this is what I do as a coach as well. So when I do one-on-ones with my clients, I've got obviously I do have regular PT personal training clients, but I do have quite um a few aerialists, and that's really the stuff I love doing as well, because this is what we look at. This is what I look at when I'm a coach. I will look at the movement patterns. And then from here, I will guide my client, be like, Okay, those are the progressive drills that we do. So obviously, in your case, I know you come to my classes, you know that we will do a lot of those progressive drills in the aerial yoga. Yeah, so we're going to do like the leg lifts, we're going to try and do the slow descending, we're going to try and do those little leg kicks, which we've done quite a lot in the classes, right? So when you look at the movement pattern, that might be a little bit more difficult for you because obviously that's not your job. But we all know that for the movement pattern of the straight arm straddle, we need good core engagement. And when we talk about the core engagement, we talk about the entire core from top to bottom, including your pelvic floor. We need a very strong hip flexor. So we need really, really good activation in the hip flexor. We need good shoulder stability, obviously, including all the stuff that I'm very pedantic in class with, that nice sort of sliding the shoulder blade down and forward, engaging into the latissimus dorsi, which are like the big lats, and also that shoulder protraction when I talk about a million times about the serratus anterior is the muscle that will bring your shoulder forward and underneath your armpit. And obviously, like flexibility, you still need to have flexibility if you want to pike. I don't know if you been to even like the class that we've done the last week or so. We've been doing the vampire, and it was quite important even for the vampire to try and fold the legs as close to us as possible. So you do need that sort of hamstring flexibility. And you did that in pike, for example, in your false grip and in your trapeze version. So again, how would you look at that? But obviously, you have to start measuring and monitoring. So, for example, when you go to the yoga class and we'll do some leg kicks into front balance, you know, that up and over, you can start be like, okay, how do I feel after doing this just 4 repetitions on each side? And that's already a good way to monitor if your stamina and if your strength is getting a little bit better. It's also to see if you feel like you can complete all the reps that we do in class, or if you are still struggling to do that. So that those can be those easy to monitor milestones for you when you go to a class and when you struggle with a certain amount of reps or a certain amount of certain kind of drills, and see you progress through that. In order to do that, obviously, we have the progressive drills that we do in class, but that's where I've created the platform that I create, is for you to kind of understand having a basic structure of a strength program that will start working with the movement pattern that we discuss on the left-hand side of the presentation of the slide. And obviously, you still want a mobility program and a recovery strategy because we have to be sustainable. We don't want to end up burning out. We don't want to end up being injured because we've done too much. And obviously, the mobility is part of finding that flexibility. So the third part that we do, so that's how we speak about the SMART goals, right? So the goal in itself doesn't have to be smart. The goal in itself, especially with aerial, is kind of tangible, but it's not that easy to make it like a SMART goal. So this is the way I focus on the SMART goal, is looking at the specificity of the movements and trying to find way to make it realistic. Make it realistic through the measuring, the monitoring, and finding this strength program that you can also measure the amount of weights you use, the amount of reps you do, and how easy you go through each workout. And obviously, the same thing, time bound timelines in part of your SMART goals. You will be like looking at 4 to 6 weeks. Obviously, the programs that I've designed are in between 4 to 6 weeks. And then you have your medium and long term goals. So in aerial, obviously, the long term goals are quite important because some goals take a long freaking time. So we have to be patient. So that's why I always say we have long-term goals. And I'm very lucky because that makes me less redundant with my clients. Very often I work with them for longer than 6 months for that reason, which is great. But it's also finding a way to stay patient with yourself and give yourself some smaller goals to achieve a little bit on the short term, on the medium term, and on the long term. Obviously, the long term is that straight arm straddle, but then maybe on the short term, you can start saying, on the short-term goals, I want to see myself completing all the workouts that are in the program because that shows that you've been consistent and you are going to start seeing yourself having better stamina. You're going to start seeing yourself developing better movement patterns in class as well. And then the medium-term goal, you can start being like, all right, I want to feel like I can do a negative, what's called a controlled descent. When you do a negative and you try and like slow down that negative before you start pulling yourself up. So working the descent before you feel that you can do the complete invert itself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So moving on to that. So this is what I put, for example, in that's why using my social media, that's what I do with one of my clients. So this is like one exercise out of like an entire program I've designed for my client. My client is like a very strong aerialist. She's like excessively strong, which is impressive. But this is what she sent me at Christmas. She's like, you know, this artist is amazing. This is the movement that I would like to achieve eventually. So obviously this is very complex. It's even more complex than just getting into an invert. There's a lot of things in the shoulder, there's a lot of things in the core that need to be working on. So that's what I was saying about finding the applications of the movement pattern that you need to work. And that's also where I come in by having designed already some of the programs in the application, is to try and bringing some basic stuff that won't feel too hard for you and easily applicable outside in the gym. So as you can see, the the body is extremely complex. So we were talking about the straight arm invert. Okay, if you look at this little dude here and look at the top and the bottom, I need to modify this so you can see everything, but you can see that obviously we have a lot of the muscles that are required for the straddle invert, for example. And then you can see the muscles at the back. So those are the posterior chain with your latissimus dorsi on the bottom right, your deltoids, your trapezius, your rhomboids. It's quite a complex movement. Even the straddle invert, there's a complex movement. There is also the hip flexor that works. And the one I was saying, if you look on the right hand side, I did put this one. It's a little bit less there is a bit less clarity, but if you look at what I was saying, the serratus anterior, I like this one because this guy has got his arm up with the shoulder, and you can see this little sort of muscle that looks a bit like the rib cage alongside the rib cage. This is basically the serratus anterior. This is what I was telling you that pulls that shoulder blade forward. So if you go back on the top left and you look at the serratus anterior again, you can see the muscle at the front have been removed. You can see how big that muscle is. It goes all the way to the front of the rib cage and it pulls all the way to the back as well. So it pulls all the way underneath the muscles of your shoulder. So it's a huge, strong muscle for aerial. And unfortunately, because a lot of us are overusing the upper traps, yeah, so that shoulder blade that rise up, we need to retrain a lot this guy here. That's a very useful muscle that will get the straddle invert is a lot of that muscle strength, a lot of it. So now again, obviously we looked at the straddle invert already, but I would have given the exercise to look again at the muscles, and maybe I'm gonna give you a minute and I want you to try and try and think about one exercise that you believe the most, it has to be basic, yeah, it can be I have a body weight exercise where you know you're working the serratus anterior, so that muscle here that brace your rib cage and that pulls the shoulder blade. And if you come to my class and if you've been listening, I think you will know.
No pressure.
No. Have you got an ID?
I'm thinking kind of,
Don't be scared of not making a mistake but not knowing. Yeah, you can try and it's fine if it's not right.
Is that plank when, oh, sorry.
No, go on.
The floating plank when we bring our knees to our chest and try to level our back into like a handstand kind of thing, if that makes
Exactly.
sense.
Yes. Yes. So, you know, when I keep telling you like this big tuck and that big rounding of the shoulders when we do the plank, the floating plank, and why we keep a high plank and we try and really round the shoulders and pull them down is to work that muscle. That's exactly that. So you see, you already know more or less, you already have an idea. And remember what I was saying, you know, that push the hammock forward when you try and do an invert, that shoulders down but forward as well, not back, trying to keep bracing of that rib cage. And when I explain, you know, your arms up in the air, you push forward and you kick the legs. And it's the same when we have the hands on the floor and we pull the knees to the chest. So yes, it's different. We do a pull when we do it as aerial, but we do a push when we have the hands on the floor. So that the that's exactly the point. So well done, because yes, it means I'm a good teacher, thank God. But it's important for you to kind of it's I think it's nice as well for you to start understanding and be like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I know what I'm doing now. I think it's important for me as well as a coach. I think the nicest moment is when you start having this little light bulb moments and you're just like, oh, okay, yes, I see what you mean. Oh, yes, I know why I'm being given this exercise to do. That makes sense. Yeah, not just like, I don't really know. And I think it's important for you and for me. I think it's really nice when you start understanding and the things that you do start making sense. Because when you have to show up to a gym to do a gym program, it's not always, we're not always like super excited to go there. Like, I'm not always excited to go and do a workout. But when you know what you're doing it for, it makes more sense. And then you're a bit more likely as well to feel motivated by it because you're like, I know this is helping me. Okay. So that's also why I want to make sure that when people start taking a program or start doing something, they don't do it just blindly and they understand why they're doing this certain movement in the program. So obviously, when we look at the next thing, so again, if you go back to your workbook with the goal action plan, you see the goal, the why, your timelines, yeah, your start date and the deadline ideally. Again, remember, don't put it too forward, but on the timeline, you can put 6 week, complete a program, 12 week, be able to do a slow descent, and maybe like in 5, 6 months, do a nice invert, you know? So I've divided it like that for that reason. Goal, wild, timeline, your start date, your deadline, a reward because we all freaking deserve a reward for achieving, and also have a look, think about the obstacles to overcome. So generally, you know, a few people like guidance and coaching. Luckily, I know both of you. But even the people I've onboarded 2 people yesterday, one is from Alabama and one is from Florida. I've literally never met them in my life. But when they join the program, the performance toolkit, I now decide to spend at least 15 minutes with them to get to know them, what they do, and make sure that they know they can get my help if they need in just changing a few exercises in the program or making sure that they get assigned the right program as well. So I think like knowing that you have someone to help you can help that can really give you a bit more the mindset of finding solutions as well, because you need the guidance, the knowledge, and also you need the time, right? And when we love doing aerial, sometimes we pack a lot of classes and sometimes it's very hard to find the time to train. So the easier program I've created, I've tried to keep them simple that they can be done within half an hour, 45 minutes. All right. Okay, my cat decided to just jump on the desk like this. Can you see her or not?
Oh yeah. Oh, she is big now, isn't she?
Yes. So yes. So yeah, so in terms of time, I've tried to make sure the workouts are simple to the point that maybe at the beginning it might take you about 45 minutes to complete, but hopefully as you get a bit more confident with them, within half an hour it can be bish bash bosh. And as you move on to the programs with a bit more difficulty, you will start knowing that it's not good. We don't want to spend like an hour at the gym. Like, it's completely useless. It's an hour max. And I don't want you to feel like this is like an entire too much commitment, yes, and that's not what we're trying to do. And also, don't think that you have to complete all of the workouts all of the time. I would say if you can complete at least 2 workout at the beginning, then that's already quite a good result. And eventually, once you start going to see the result, it's going to be very easy for you to be like, I want to do this 3 times a week. So it will be a lot easier to make the time for it. But it's starting small that is the most important. For the flexibility is the same as well, is doing the small 10, 15 minutes ish 2 or 3 times a week rather than trying to do too much and maybe just go. You can do a contortion. When I teach my contortion classes as well, I tend to break it down and tell them, okay, this is what we're doing now. We're doing a warm up. Now this is the mobility thing. Okay, now this is the end range conditioning, and those are the static stretching. So this way they can pick apart the structure. And when people practice by themselves, so you'll see on the replays as well, this is going to be like this on the replays of my classes. You're going to see that, and this will give you an idea of like, okay, this is 10-15 minutes that I can do, and I find this will help me. So it's also important for you to start picking and choosing. And that's why also I gave you that exercise of understanding, trying to understand what you need and what exercise you need, so you can actually make the time for the stuff that really matters. Right? So the action steps is basically what I just said. Obviously, when you want to be a really good aerial athlete, we don't just think about aerial. Aerial is basically just step 6 here. It's like a big iceberg. I should have done an iceberg, really. But we've got strength, conditioning. Yeah, the strength, obviously, to become stronger, the strength program. The conditioning is obviously to build the stamina. So those are the stuff that you do, for example, in your warm up, in your force grip class. And then you got the recovery, which would be, some yoga, some Pilates, aerial yoga, and some rehab as well, making sure you do a bit of foam rolling and release. And if you can get massages, go and get massages. Mobility, flexibility can go together if you do contortion and if you do a few practice of mobility on the side for yourself. And obviously those lead to a bit more intentional practice as well. So when you go to your classes, you start being a bit more intentional in a sense that you know what you need to do. And the better you know what you're doing, obviously the quicker your progress as well. This is really how it works. So when I look at, you can see now if you, on the workbook, I've done all of this. So you will see I've put the other anatomy little dudes in there for you. Obviously, you can also ask ChatGPT, to be honest, but the thing is, aerial is still very niche. So with aerial, it will be quite niche to be like, for ChatGPT to be like, okay, those are the muscles you need to work, and this is like the exercise you need to do. But you could ask sometimes that can help you a little bit. It's not the best because it's very niche, but it's, if you want to try, I welcome that. In terms of goal tracking, the goal tracker plan, I would say use that on a monthly basis, and you can kind of implement a few steps as well. So we've got the big goals in the goal action. So those are where you divide your goals, and then you have your goal trackers that I've done for, in the planner, you got about 3 months worth. And then you can have a look at the monthly. I've just put the monthly overview here, but I will also send you a little weekly one that you can put in your phone that looks a little bit like the one that I've got here, where you can actually put emojis and so on. So this way you know what you're doing. But with the monthly overview, you can start planning and be like, okay, every Monday, this is what I do. Every Tuesday, this is what I do. Those are when I recover, and this is when I do my workouts. So for example, here, I've only put two strength workout and combined with the aerial class. So this way you don't feel too knackered, and it will be hard at the beginning, but this way you kind of combine the hard things together. And when you recover, you can recover properly, because if you do an aerial class, it's already taxing. And then you end up having to do strength and mobility, and that's a second day of taxing exercising. So personally, I prefer when I can pack everything in, the hard stuff together, and then I keep the easier stuff together as well. So this way it doesn't feel as overwhelming. It feels hard at the beginning because you double up on the stuff that's taxing, but eventually your body picks up. So that's why I said start only with like two and then only start increasing the intensity a bit later on. So for example, here I put two strength training, three aerial classes, and some flexibility to work the straddle pancake for the straight arm invert, some little SMR and foam rolling, and some SMR mobility combined with a bit of recovery. And obviously, one full rest day. People do not take enough full rest days. But it's important to have a full rest day. Do you take full rest days?
Ish.
I know. Like people in gym box do not.
Yeah.
Actually, today's my full rest day.
I said just do yin yoga on your rest day or something like that. But try even if you have the energy, I'm not saying every week, but you can at least tell yourself, okay, there is one day at least a month that I need to like do
Yeah.
nothing at all. It's really important when you do aerial that your nervous system completely resets. Your nervous system gets shut down quite quickly if you just do that, especially if you start doing the strength training. So obviously, the way we stay accountable to ourselves and track it is making sure we measure everything. So like I said, you can measure on your drill, but when you do a program, it's easier also to measure if you start increasing the weight, increasing the reps, or if you start holding stuff a little bit longer. Obviously, I've given you the workbook that you can start using as a planner to really keep a structure. And obviously, if you use the app, everything will be tracked through the app as well. And you can review weekly, monthly, quarterly. I tend to review mostly monthly and quarterly myself. But I have a thing for me weekly is I have a little tick app, where I can tick the stuff that I do every day to try and keep my habits up.
Mhm.
So whatever works for you, but I like to track my habits weekly. So then I know at the end of the month if I've done quite well or if I need to adjust, because that's an important part as well, is finding the way to adjust. Yeah. Instead of like feeling frustrated and feeling stuck, sometimes we need to reassess the goals, be like, all right, maybe this is going to take me a bit longer. Maybe I need to review my strategy because I feel burnt out after 4 weeks. Maybe I've not hit certain milestones that I need, so I need to also have a look at that. So it's important to also be honest and sometimes adjust what's needed.
Mhm.
So this is why I've created, yes, the Aerial Performance Lab. So obviously you've seen a little bit of it through the challenge. I'm going to start adding more and more content. I was actually considering doing a webinar like this every month. So every month, something on a subject, on a topic. I was going to do, I think, maybe the hip flexibility next month. But I don't know if you've seen, I've just added all of you as well, the recipe books as well. I need to
Yeah.
send a little video. But I've already done quite a lot of programs. Obviously, if you need me to readjust the programs, because what I've done in the challenge is that it assigns to you automatically. But if you need some changes, obviously, that's not something that takes me a long time to adjust if you need. Obviously, what you get is the programs. You get all the online classes. We're going to also start doing a monthly live Q&A. So if you have any questions, if you don't quite understand, there will be like a little group coaching session. Like I say, I'm going to start implementing a monthly webinar. So we're going to work about injury prevention, some flexibility science. Maybe we're talking about techniques, training structure again. When you sign up, obviously you get your onboarding call. I think, Dawn, you booked it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So this way, like we can actually start tailoring things a little bit more to what you need. Obviously, there is the on-demand training content, which is going to get bigger and bigger because with the online classes, that's going to be a huge and full library. The split that I'm doing right now, the split classes I'm doing right now, I'm going to start using them to create a program for getting your splits. So everything is going to get structured for that as well. So an actual program for the splits, including some strength exercises in it as well. Obviously, the member community, I really want to grow a little bit because I want more engagement. I'm like tired of having crickets when I send a message in a group. I need more people on there. And obviously, I'm a one person system, and I want to make sure that I stay the person. Like, I will not use a personal assistant to answer messages that are towards the people. So I will always be on the other line. If I ever manage to afford an assistant, I will use my assistant for other stuff. But everything that go through the app is just so special and so specific that when you send a message, it will always be me that will reply. So that's why at the moment I still charge very low price. I think I told you, Dawn, I'm kind of aiming to charge £50 by the end of this year, because I think with
yeah.
what I give,
No, there's a lot. Yeah.
that's the aim. So yes, so remember, very cheesy quote to finish. And I just want to say thank you.
No, thank you. This was really helpful.